I don't think it's a great idea to start having 3 o'clock meetings when it's glorious outside. This is a perfect day for an evening meeting.
That means it'll be a short meeting.
Oh.
Councillor Verbeek, can you hear me?
I sure can, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Good. You got my email, eh? I sent you that reply back.
I did. Thank you very
Okay.
much for that.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're all set. We're live. Good afternoon, council. Can anybody hear me? Everybody can hear me? Steve, you look the same. I will pop around one day there and take care of you, but anyways, welcome, guys. And this should be an interesting meeting. Some of these items we really touched on quite a few times already, but it's always nice maybe to talk. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. Any conflict amongst the council here tonight? Seeing none, I need a motion to adopt the published agenda tonight or this afternoon. I need a mover, please. Councillor Vanden and Councillor Verbeek.
No, I wanted to speak to it before we adopt it. How do I do that?
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh.
Speak on it.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering if we could amend it, just change it a little. I'm looking through it and the safety zones are at the bottom and I'm afraid there's so many other issues that are ahead of it. We might not get to it. And it's not it's a matter of safety, but it's also, it came to us on October 19th through a motion of council, and a lot of those other things are important. Everything on there is, but I'm just nervous about having that at the very bottom. And I'm wondering if we could move it further up just so we make sure we get to it.
Okay, I'll have Chris talk on that. Go ahead, Chris.
Everybody, nice to see everybody. I appreciate everyone's time. I really do. I think this is a good meeting. Councillor Verbeek, part of the issue with providing the agenda, I sent out numerous emails at probably around the turn of the year or the beginning of the year, having everybody prioritize their list so that this meeting became a council initiative and what their initiatives were on ranking. So I ranked them. I provided you guys with the ranking on who filled out their forms, how they ranked them, which provided us a list to be able to go off. If we start, it's up to council, but if you start jumping priorities, then the issue becomes, there's also what's not on this list. There's probably another 20 items on the infrastructure spreadsheet that I didn't put here because I knew we wouldn't get to them. So I cautioned council, and this was the whole reason, part of the issue to get to this meeting was, how do we identify which items we're going to speak about? I thought it was the fairest way to proceed. Rank them, score them. Here they are. That's where they rank. That's where council felt the most priority should be given. That's why we're putting in that order. So.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Meloche, go ahead.
Yes, and I think we should just leave it the way it is too. I don't want to waste any time on this meeting trying to figure out what order we've got them in. We've got an order already presented to us. Let's just leave it. Let's get into the nitty gritty and let's start just going through these. The only other thing I want to say before we adopt it too is I'd really like to finish at about 4:45 so that we can go into open session, adopt whatever we have to adopt, or maybe 10 to 5. But I don't think we should go any longer than 5 o'clock. Let's just call it at 5. Even if we don't finish this list, we're going to have another meeting to finish whatever else is on this list. We're advertising this
Problem.
3 to 5.
Not
I
a
think we should
problem.
stick with it. Okay, thanks.
Not a problem. That's a positive, Deputy Mayor. On the floor, who was the seconder on, Councillor Verbeek was the seconder. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, so once again, and I'll move quickly here, the purpose of the meeting is to provide a less formal format without strict adherence to the procedural rules. So it's recommended that council goes into a committee of the whole format. So in order to do that, we would be looking for 2 motions for council. The first one is to appoint a presiding officer over the committee. Recommended, Your Worship, that someone other than Your Worship, we would recommend our CAO to oversee the discussion and more importantly, to note any recommendations that are made while in committee. Please note 2 things about committee of the whole is that it's still in public unless the committee decides to go into close, but it's still in public. And any recommendations that are made while in committee are non-binding. So presiding officer, when the committee decides to come out back into the regular special meeting, the presiding officer could report on those recommendations, and then if council chooses, they could make those binding actions coming out of that. So that would be the first thing, Mr. Mayor, is to appoint a presiding officer for the committee of the whole.
Rob, to council, can I have a motion to appoint Chris, please? Councillor Vandendolen and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Everybody voted yes. Thank you.
And secondly, Mr. Mayor, is just a motion that council now go into committee of, I guess, 5 p.m. so as to consider the items identified on the committee of the whole agenda.
A mover by Councillor Bowman and a seconder, please. Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Chris.
Okay, all right, council, let's get into this. So what I'm going to do as far as format goes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash, 2 hours max. We talked about try and hit 15 minutes a topic if needed. A lot of these topics I think have been addressed, but I still want to discuss them as they were identified priorities for council. So I want to make sure that we at least talk to them and say, yes, they've been addressed. We can check it off. What I'm going to ask is the councillor who identified the item as a priority, I'm going to ask them to give a bit of a 30-second blurb so that all of council understands why they brought it up as a priority. Okay, so any questions on the format? Councillor Guerin?
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, can highway expansion services and the Highway 3 expansion all be talked at the same time?
It can. We can do that. They're different topics, but it can, because the one is talking about the expansion of services on the other side, the water, the sewer, how we're tying it into those. Expansion that deals with
One might just lead into the other.
So, but again, I'd like to stick to the list, Councillor Guerin, because that's what council sent it as a priority. So we'll hit them as they come. Like I said, some of them can be quick. So seeing no other questions, the first item on the list is the highway expansion of services. Mayor and Councillor Bjorkman both brought that up as priorities. It was our #1 ranked thing. So Mayor Snively, if you'd like to give us just a quick highlight of what that's about.
Good. Thank you, Chris. The reason I brought this forward, council, is I campaigned on this issue, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. With the expansion, what's going on right now with growth on this side of #3, we're getting pretty close to being full. And now I think it's a proper time now with the expansion of Highway 3. This is a good time to bring, we've already talked about bringing water. The water's going across. So the services are going over there now. So we spoke on this, and I don't know how much farther we can go on it, but we've already decided the services are going over there. So I don't know if we need any further discussion on it, but I'm going to go. Yeah, I'll go right back to Chris on this, but I think council knows where I stand on this issue here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to have Kevin just give a quick summary so that the The expansion of services, both water and sewer, where we are at with those. I know they've been recent, but Kevin? You're mute, Kevin.
Can't hear you, Kevin.
Your mic might be on the wrong selection.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Sorry, technical difficulties, problems of 2021. So thank you for that. So as the mayor mentioned, the expansion of services is well underway, as you've seen from a couple of reports that we've brought to your attention now in the new year. The addendum to the ESR to include the sanitary sewer service area is underway with Stantec Consulting, as was awarded by council earlier this year. And that will essentially allow us to proceed with the addendum and include it into the service area and provide alternatives and to check capacity for bringing sanitary sewers to those developable lands west of Highway 3 or south of Highway 3, however you like to orient yourself. The water main was also brought to council's, the regular meeting of council at the last meeting, which the town has worked with the design builder for the Highway 3 expansion to extend servicing across the highway, generally at the 14th concession. So that water main will connect to the water main on South Talbot Road, be extended under Highway 3 to the 14th concession, which will allow any potential developers in the future of those industrial lands that are identified in the official plan to connect to and extend to their property. So I will say that it's a strong, we have a strong ability to get to where we need to service all those properties on the other side of the highway. We're well underway with that, and we'll be in a position soon that when developers come and approach us to start building on that side of the highway, we will be able to provide servicing.
Kevin, is there questions? I see Deputy Mayor.
Oh, what about other services like, I would imagine there's bell lines on the other side or telephone lines, and but what about gas line? I don't know, a lot of the industries that want to develop want to use gas. And if there's gas on the Essex northeast side of Highway 3, that maybe there's no gas lines on the southwest side right now. Maybe we should be looking to talk with the gas company to see if they want to put a line in while Highway 3 is being expanded to accommodate our industrial site or our expansion on the other side. And the other question I had too was, will there be service tunnels that the province is going to put in underneath the highway so that in the future they don't, it's not such a big issue to move another service through to the other side?
I can speak to that, Chris.
Please do. Thanks, Kevin.
So the provisions for future servicing, I'll start with that. Unfortunately, with ongoing changes with the province and regulations and dealing with the Ministry of Transportation's Corridor Division, we'll constantly have to go for permitting to do any work within the right of way, regardless of if it's an existing or a new service. We'll always have that hurdle to jump over. Mind you, the town has developed a really good relationship with the MTO, especially through this Highway 3 project. We've been working really well in partnership, and I do feel that potential future changes that may come down the road, that the town is a very strong stakeholder with the MTO, and I do feel that we'll have a little bit more success in the future. As far as the gas goes, I do believe that there's gas on County Road 8. I'm not 100% certain of that, and I can contact on council's behalf Union Gas or Enbridge to verify that. But there has been some conversations in the past since even I've started at the town of Essex about gas there, and there is also hydro on that County Road 8 corridor as well. So I do believe that third-party infrastructure does exist there that can be extended without significant difficulty to those lands on Pinkerton in the 14th concession. But I can definitely verify that on behalf of council. That's not an issue.
Questions on the expansion of services across Highway 3? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Bjorkman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Nepsey. Just quickly to that, so we're going to have some road realignment when the MTO comes through and puts in the highway. So if somebody came to us now, we get these services put across, Pinkerton's still going to be there, right? We're gonna have a couple of roads that are going to end. They won't go through the way they did before to County Road 8. But is everything that's going to be accessible after those roads close, is that all accessible now? Should somebody start getting interested in building?
Yeah, I can answer that as well. The Pinkerton will exist. The current alignment close to 14th concession will remain as is. It is the alignment of Pinkerton closer to County Road 8 will be moving westerly towards away from the highway and align with the future South Talbot Road and Lakeshore. So that will be pushing over to the side westerly a little bit there. But the access for vehicular traffic won't change. So they'll still have the same access. There is a future implications potentially if we do see some significant development in that area to maybe look at road structure and things like that, and making sure that Pinkerton can handle future traffic loading. But at this time right now, it's not of major concern until we start seeing some development in that area.
Okay, good info. Anybody else? No. Okay, so that was topic 1. That's great. No, we're moving on to the second topic then. Let's talk about, second topic is a sidewalk or the path by Canadian Tire and Tim Hortons on Maidstone Avenue West. So from Talbot to Tim Hortons, I know we've all heard about it. Councillor Bowman, this was your item that council ranked as a second item to talk about. If you can give us a bit of a, it's pretty obvious, but if you can speak to it, please.
Just shortly, that issue has popped before us numerous times over the last few years. And with the development in the area, it seems the logical time to incorporate it into the, I guess, the development ideas as we move forward. So, it doesn't have to be done immediately, but it should be in the works as we develop those properties along the road. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, just I'll let Kevin respond to that first. Kevin, do you have any info with respect to planning on that sidewalk or trail, or is it ultimately a budget item for council to consider in the next budget?
Yeah, it's certainly both. It's both of those things. So the first thing I'd like to mention is, we are working with the developer for the Essex Town Center lands. As everybody knows, it's a significant development in the town of Essex that we're very excited for. And we have worked in some provisions within that development to connect to a future multi-use trail on Maidstone Avenue. So it is something that is on our radar. We're aware of it. We know it's a council initiative, and also trying to piece together the active transportation network as a whole within Ward 1, especially ensuring that we have connections throughout our town to make it further accessible to walking, pedestrians, or cycling, or any kind of active transportation for that matter. So we are putting provisions in there in the Essex Town Center development to accommodate that. But ultimately, this is truly a budget decision. The town's very focused on preventative maintenance right now of our sidewalks and trails, and any future initiatives like this, which would be a fairly significant undertaking, would require some council funding. We could certainly include it as part of, for instance, we could certainly include it as part of the wish list for council discussion. So if council wish to include this multi-use trail on the wish list, we could put together a budgetary estimate for it, to be considered as part of the 2022 budget.
Councilor Bowman?
Yeah, just sort of a follow-up on that, with the development of South Talbot, and it's obviously under some construction right now. Is there a sidewalk allotted for that stretch of roadway going down there? That might be a quick fix for on a short term, because we have the Urquhart Trail coming out there now and going down South Talbot. It would make sense to have some kind of a sidewalk going in the opposite direction towards, let's say, the Tim Hortons down there. So I don't know what's in the works, but it seems to me as we're doing the construction would make sense.
Councilor Bowman, that's a very timely question. Director Kevin, if you can shed some light on that.
Sure. So we are working with the MTO, as mentioned, for South Talbot Road. As council is aware, the South Talbot Road connection is going to be brought through all the way to Victoria as part of the MTO highway widening projects and the provisions for the closure of Victoria and Highway 3. The reason Chris says that it's very timely is because we are actually working with the MTO right now to try and get that pathway installed, that multi-use pathway installed, not only from Victoria to the Greenway, but from Victoria all the way to Maidstone. So we're currently working with the MTO on that. We're trying to work something out, looking at the design and looking at the alignments, and we're hoping to be able to provide a full out commitment on that in the very near future.
Mayor Snively, Councilor Vanderdolen, Councilor Bjorkman, and then Deputy Mayor Malott. Mayor?
Thank you. Very, very quickly, maybe I'm going to direct this to Councilor Bowman. We're looking at a sidewalk. Are we looking at maybe costing on both, Councilor Bowman, a hard surface and a gravel trail, or no? It's what were you looking
Well,
at?
obviously the ideal is a hard surface of either asphalt or concrete. Concrete obviously stands up longer and is maintained longer. And since we're working with the MTO at this time, it would seem to be ideal time to be going for the better surface. So, you know, funding wise, it probably makes the most sense.
Councilor Vanderdolen, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm glad this is on the list. It's along with Councilor Bowman. I think it's really important. But instead of having to swallow the 600 grand all at once, isn't there some way we could do it like piecemeal? Like it seems to me that the piece from the Valente development out to McDonald's has to be the easiest and cheapest portion to complete. I know there's some topography issues when you go further east from there towards the next light, but couldn't we split it up somehow and do the cheap part first just to get it off the ground, get it going?
Yeah. Councilor Vanderdolen, absolutely. Again, that's up to council's discretion during budget, right? We give you piecemeal it. I see Director Gerard, not Director Kevin, has a question here or a comment.
Yeah, I think it is something that I have been thinking on as well. As you mentioned, Councilor Vanderdolen, something that we've been discussing internally as well is potentially doing the pathway from the intersection of Bell to the development of Essex Town Center, which is why we've included some provisions for the connection into that trail at Essex Town Center, where it will meet the intersection of the new Peter Street and Maidstone Ave, which will provide walkability through the subdivision as well. So there are going to be sidewalks through the subdivision, and there is a little bit larger trail in there that's being included, which will provide a connection for phase 1 of Essex Town Center all the way to South Talbot Road and the future Reed Street. So there is the ability to actually connect everybody all the way to South Talbot Road and the McDonald's, Tim Hortons, Canadian Tire through that development. So if it was council's wish, we could do it in 2 phases to bring the pathway to Peter Street as part of the, in 2022, and then potentially looking at doing the remainder of it from Peter Street in front of Canadian Tire and all the way to Tim Hortons in the future. So that provision is there for council if they wanted to. It is something that we have been discussing internally.
Great, thanks. I just, because it doesn't have to be contiguous, just as long as we get it off the ground, and I think it would be easier to, it gives us more options if we could do it in a couple of pieces. So thanks, that's great.
Good. Councillor Bjorkman?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, this has been on the council wish list since 2015. It's there every year. It just doesn't get the support for the amount of money that it needs because it's expensive. And we haven't started putting money away for it in particular, which we should have done. And hopefully we start doing this year. In front of the Canadian Tire, it needs a sidewalk. There's a curb on the road, and there's a path that's 6 inches wide, that's 12 inches from the road that people walk and ride their bikes on. And I've been out there with people that are doing that when I was in Essex Center. And when those oil trucks go sailing past you, they sneak up on you real fast. So I think there was an opportunity when we got the development done down there with Tim Hortons and McDonald's, and those businesses are bringing people from town, bringing kids from the high school, bringing people down there, and with no safe way for them to get there. So I just continue to encourage, what we need is a sidewalk in front of Canadian Tire, and at least there are nice wide shoulders to start that get as you get back into town. But once you hit that property, there is nowhere for people to get out of the way. So I think it's very important that we find a way. And if we've got developers now that are going to be bringing people down that way, and they're going to have their residents using that road to get up into town, then we find a way to help them help us keep these people safe.
Just before Deputy Mayor Malash, I just want to make a comment as well. The development that was northeast of the tracks that we had looked at it for affordable housing a couple of years ago. Also note that anything that gets developed there will have a trail / sidewalk multi-use path in front of that. So that's that kind of that next connection on the other side of the tracks that almost gets you to the high school. So there's kind of maybe those piecemeal options will be best. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. So what I guess the question is, so we're going to do sidewalk up to Peter Street, from Peter Street to the South Talbot connection at County Road 8 will be a pathway in front of Canadian Tire and whatever other businesses that would go up on that vacant piece of land. Because I'm guessing that we'll probably end up being the ones that take away the snow in front of Canadian Tire and whatever other development there is there, because that'll be a commercial district, is what I'm guessing. I don't know. I guess I'm asking that question. And I just want to tell people as well that going back 15 years ago when this development was first proposed to the town of Essex, I think Councillor Bowman as well, but the majority of council said, oh, no, based on a planning recommendation, we didn't need to pick up the cost of this sidewalk all the way from where it finished to the Tim Hortons, because that was the only business that was out there. They said, oh no, we're trying to pick up traffic highway traffic. So we don't think we should have to pay for the development of a sidewalk all the way out there. And that was a big mistake at that point in time, because we've been battling this 5 years after that development was there, we're battling. But that's an education piece that we should all keep in mind, because a lot of you are going to be here a lot longer than I am on council. Just remember that. So, you know, if these developers are arguing not to put the money in because, oh, it doesn't affect them, it does. I don't care what they say. So just going back, I just have those other questions that I want to ask. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think in terms of what it would be and how it would plow would, I think, come out of the discussion around budget, right? In terms of when it was actually approved. You're right, though, in terms of multi-use trails, most of the ones in town, in Harrow Center as well, are plowed by the town. So that would be a decision or a level of service and operational costs that council would have. was the last on my list. Is there anyone else that has a question or want to hear some information with respect to this particular sidewalk? No? Okay. So on to the third one. And again, I think this is one of those ones that is being addressed through the Harrow Streetscape, but it was brought up by both Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bondi. But as the ward rep, Councillor Bondi, can you kind of give us a little bit of a summary, a history on this for you?
Sure. Thank you, CAO Nepsi. It's just been a corner in Ward 4 that residents notice multiple accidents, whether the police report can concur or not, but it's also busy, hard to turn at some points of the day, right? And I don't know what the solution is. Just want to bring it up for discussion. I think I was told during the streetscape plan that the infrastructure is being put underground in case we do want to put a traffic light, or, you know, if the county will help us put a traffic light at some point. It's just a contentious corner that residents want to see improvements rather than just a bigger stop sign or a flashing little lighted stop sign. Thank you.
Councillor Bondi. Kevin, can you comment a bit on the technical design of that intersection?
Sure. Yeah, so there's a couple things here. Knowing that there was an issue that was raised by council with this intersection, we did evaluate it as part of the streetscaping project, and looking at different size vehicles, tractor trailers, buses, multi-axle vehicles that would use this intersection, and mostly from the perspective of if somebody was traveling on King Street and wanting to make a right turn onto Erie Street to head south towards Colchester, that they would no longer run over the curb and run over the sidewalk in that area, basically. So we evaluated that, and as part of the streetscape, what we've done is we're going to be removing the piece of curb at that southwest corner of the intersection and aligning that to provide a little bit more space. In addition to that, actually, I have a diagram I can share with council. Let me see if I have the ability to share. Can council see me? Yes? Okay, great. So as you can see on the diagram that I'm showing you, this is going to be the new reconfigured intersection of Erie and King Street. So a couple of things that we've done to improve this intersection. One that Councillor Bondi already mentioned, we are putting in provisions for conduit underneath the road to accommodate a traffic signal in the future if it was ever required. The traffic signal would be required. It would have to be paid for entirely by the town, as this is incorporated in a connecting link agreement with the county. So that implication would be on the town and only the town at a future date. But what we've done here is, as you can see on this southwest corner, as I mentioned, we are removing this curb and realigning it to provide a little bit more space, as the current curb is out here a little bit more, which basically has the vehicles running all over the curb. The other thing that we're doing is we're adding a taper here to the southeast corner of the intersection to provide those vehicles that will be turning right with a little bit more space on that side, and what it should do is allow them with enough turning radius to avoid the southwest corner. So that came as part of a little bit of a traffic evaluation as part of the Harrow Streetscape project. In addition to that, you'll notice that on King Street in this section that we have moved the traffic to the north. So essentially what we did to improve the turning radius is we will be changing the parking on King Street from the north side of the road to the south side of the road. And what that'll allow is the vehicles to travel a little bit more northerly from this intersection, and again, provide a little bit more radius for them to turn there. So that will come as likely towards the end of the Harrow Streetscape project. I will be coming to council with a report to make an amendment to the parking bylaw to change that parking from the north side of the road to the south side of the road. So that also comes with a bit of a shift in the traffic heading westbound from King Street. So you can see the line painting here. That's all hatched off to push people towards that north curb and have everybody traveling in that along the northern curb there. In addition, you can see that there is a pedestrian crossing while I have it up and there for you as well. There is a pedestrian crossing being installed as part of this project as well on the eastern portion of the intersection. It will be a push button crossing that will allow pedestrians to come up, push the buttons. It'll activate the lighting and have vehicles stopping at these stop bars here in the project. And it'll allow for a safer, more controlled pedestrian crossing within the intersection as well. And although it doesn't improve the overall turning radius or the radius issue that I know is contentious here, it will overall improve the safety of that intersection as well, and maybe potentially provide a little bit more time and attention to it. So that is the intersection configuration for the Harrow streetscape. And if there's any questions on it, by all means, here to answer them.
Just waiting to view here. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Chris. Just a question here, like, so some of these ideas that we have for widening the north side of the road, widening the south side of the road and narrowing the north side, they come from traffic counts and knowing which direction traffic's coming from and where the left-hand turns are being made and the right-hand turns, etc. I'm guessing that it would be. My question is, I guess, is that I could have foreseen that, I would have thought that a left-hand turn when you're westward bound off of King onto Erie might have been a good idea. So coming from downtown Harrow towards Erie, a left-hand turn to turn onto Erie, and maybe in the future, I don't know, maybe there's not enough traffic that goes straight through or turns right. Maybe the time that they're held up to make a left-hand turn is not that significant that we need to think about a left-hand turn. But what I'm truly thinking of is, and maybe it's not a concern for today, maybe 5-10 years into the future, where tourism becomes a big issue or a big part of the community in Colchester or along County Road 50, that a lot of that traffic is going to come up from Walker Road up through Harrow and then turn onto Erie. The amount of traffic I think that's going to be going into the Colchester area because of the wine industry and because of what we've done with the harbor and the beach and so on, I think the traffic is going to increase significantly. So Kevin, I guess I'm just looking to you for an answer. Were these configurations based on traffic counts?
The preliminary traffic study did evaluate the turning movements and everything in it, which basically told us that no configuration changes were needed. The big concern with this intersection was trying to improve the safety and ensuring that the larger vehicles that typically cause an issue at this intersection can basically travel it a little bit more safely and a little better. I don't disagree with you that, as tourism increases in the town, and especially in Colchester and Harrow, that the intersection may need to be reevaluated again for turning movements, and whether that means that a left turn lane would be required at that time or other factors for that matter. It's why we put it is why we put the conduit underneath the road now, to ensure that it would be there and we wouldn't have to damage the beautiful work that we're going to do if we had to do that evaluation. There is a pretty considerable road width here, so some turning lanes could likely be accommodated. They're just not needed at this time, but there is definitely the ability for us to reassess that in the future and make those changes as we need.
Councillor Bjorkman, then Councillor Vanderdoen.
Thank you, Chris. And to Kevin, I like the improvements that are there, but I'll tell you, I come up Erie Road on a regular basis heading into Harrow, and if I need to turn left, there are a lot of us sitting on Erie waiting for the 3 or 4 people that are turning left. And if they're hauling a boat, or the other 3 or 4 people that are hauling boats, we're on Erie for quite some time. So I do believe that we are going to need those left turn lanes and a signalized intersection. Wintertime, you can come out here now, there's no problem. You make those turns, you can get where you need to go. But when summer comes and you're out here on the weekends, one of my concerns, I like the idea of the pedestrian cross, but is making sure that the people who are coming up Erie and are going to turn right, and that pedestrian crossing is right there, that there is something to tell the people at that corner, because they've been waiting to get to that corner. They're finally there, and they're going. So I think it's really important that we look at it from the perspective of the people that are coming north on Erie as they go to make that right-hand turn. That it's very obvious to them that there's a pedestrian crossing, because we're going to have a lot of people who have never been out here before in the summer. They don't know anything about that corner. They don't know there's a cross walk there. So I think it's really important that we look at this from a tourism point of view, that we've got lots of people who have never seen it and are coming there for the very first time, that we really highlight that's there. I think it's a good idea, but there's going to be people stressed out having waited for a while to make their turn. So I do like the improvements. I like the alignment. That's all going to improve it. But I think we're on our way to, at least for the summers, a little more controls there. Thank you.
Councillor Bjorkman, if I can just add to that, these pedestrian crossings are now, how they look, how they manage it are all through the Ontario Traffic Council. They're all the same wherever you go in the province now, and you're starting to see them pop up. It'll come with a communication kind of kickoff as well, similar to what the county did when they opened their first one on Walker Road. I think it's becoming more part of our norm for everybody to see those, but I don't disagree. Some additional signage maybe for everybody else to highlight the important, crossing that will take place there. So, Kevin, did you have anything else to add to Councillor Bjorkman's comments? I don't know.
No, I was gonna comment the same way, that that most of these pedestrian crossings are standardized all over the province, and that my comment to the deputy mayor is still the same, right? If in the future things get a little bit crazy at this intersection because of an increase in traffic or along those lines, we can always reevaluate this intersection, and the provisions are there. They're built in to make a configuration change if necessary, right? So our study now tells us that nothing's needed, but like I said, it can change, right? We know that as administration, that things tend to change, and they tend to change on us quickly, especially when tourism can be very unpredictable, and COVID throws things at us too sometimes that could see an increase or a decrease in tourism, right? So those provisions are there, and we'll continue to evaluate this intersection. And as we receive complaints or as we monitor this intersection, we'll certainly keep it in mind and reevaluate.
I know Councillor Vanderdoorn, you had your hand up. We're coming up to our 15 minutes for this topic, so I hope it's not too in depth of a question, but go ahead.
Oh, no, it's fairly brief. Notwithstanding Mr. Gerard's traffic study, which I don't doubt, that I think that this intersection, rebuilding it eventually still is a glaring need, that it is dysfunctional. But these tricks and tweaks that he's come up with are great. I hope that staves off the need for a little while. But I just want to put on the table that as bad as this intersection is, it's not as bad, in my opinion, as Maidstone and Maidstone and Talbot in Essex Center. That if we had $500,000 or $1 million to spend, I think we get way more bang for our buck, and we'd probably affect 5 times more drivers and pedestrians especially. So I think that should be our priority. Even though I recognize that this Harrow one is bad too, we need to do it, and I'm on side for doing both, but I just would prioritize the other one first. So thanks for the work on this, Mr. Gerard. I'm looking forward to the improvements.
Thanks, Councillor Vanderdoorn. I think that's a great one to add to your next time we have a roundtable. Okay, so we're wrapping up then Erie King. Let's move on to the next one, and I know it ties back to our earlier one. Councillor Guerin, you noted traffic flow report assuming Highway 3 will be closed for access at end of Victoria. So I'm guessing access issues through construction, but please take us through where you're at with it.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, so my concerns, and a lot of this is going to hinge on the time frame on Highway 3, when the overpass will be done, when the access on and off Victoria will actually happen. But if it is in the next, say, 22 to 23, early 23, looking at a lot of the projects we have on the go, which is fantastic. I mean, Essex Centers, if you live in Essex Center, you can see a big change in the streets and in our area of construction in the next couple, 3 years. But I've got my map here with all the roads marked off that are deemed for some construction. So I'm just concerned about timing, detouring, and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, when Victoria gets shut down, we are going to be putting an extreme amount of pressure on some of our other roads and our intersections, such as one Councillor Vanderdolen just talked about at Maidstone and Talbot, where the Tim Hortons is. But we're planning on extending South Talbot all the way through. We're planning on doing Victoria. We're doing Main Street. Main Street's going to run into that intersection. And then we've got the Hanlon extension that's going to be coming, and it's all part of this MTO work as well. And on top of all that, we have some soccer fields we got to replace and some construction to still discuss how and when we're going to start the new sports complex. So all these projects kind of come together, and I've already had residents discussing, the added traffic that they think they're going to get on their road, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully, I know that we're working with MTO, and we're going to hopefully have some sort of a plan for all this traffic flow. So that's kind of where I was at with it.
Thanks, Councillor Guerin. I know Kevin has had many in-depth discussions with the MTO, in particular on the timing of closures and construction. So he can take you, they have I guess, an in-depth plan on and logical on why they're doing things and closures on Highway 3. So Kevin, take it away.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, you brought up a lot of moving pieces there, right? And that's the key to this entire thing, and the struggle that, my department deals with on a daily basis, and not only my department, but also development services, finance, everybody playing an integral part of this, right? There's a lot of things happening in the town. And on top of those things, we have development as well. And we have, just in infrastructure services alone, $20 million worth of capital, right? So there's certainly a lot of things happening this year, and a lot of things happening that are going to be impacting us because of the highway. But if I can talk a little bit about, so the closure of Victoria and Highway 3, as most of us know, the provision that's been put in place that was identified in the Transportation Environmental Study report that was completed by Dylan as part of the highway widening project identified two means of getting the traffic onto the highway, which was South Talbot Road and the Hanlon Street extension. So essentially with that closure, we'll have, the town worked with the MTO to work on our standards and work on everything to get South Talbot Road built. That is the initial phase as part of the highway. That is an approved contract with the highway. They have commenced the work within that corridor, and you may have seen them in the area. They've closed in the existing rush drain now. They're getting ready to install the water main, or the water main crossings across the highway. And then eventually what they'll be doing is reconstructing South Talbot Road and also linking it up together on the other side of the Greenway, between the Greenway and the existing cul-de-sac. So that's all happening right now. The closure of Victoria will happen in the next phase of construction, which is contract 2 of the MTO's project, where they'll need to start working on the overpass structure that goes across Victoria, or will be going over Victoria. But if the other part of the first phase 2 would be the work at Maidstone and Highway 3. So if I can, maybe what I'll do is I'll share my screen again, and I have the mapping, and I'm sure that most of you have already seen it. Let's see, can council see my screen? So this is these are the recommended plans out of the TESR that I was mentioning. So you can see in the Maidstone intersection here that there are some improvements that are going to be occurring as part of this first phase. That would be, realigning and redoing the eastbound lanes that go in front of Tim Hortons and McDonald's, along with improving the what would be the, I guess, north to east ramp on the highway out in front as well, and improving that ramp, along with the realignment of Pinkerton Road, side road here, to move westerly, like I had mentioned before. And then some additional work that's in the town of Lakeshore by, closing Ellis Side Road and also closing the South Talbot Road Lakeshore side and realigning that similar to Pinkerton. You can see here that the project includes the connection here of South Talbot Road that currently doesn't exist. So this connection here will bring South Talbot Road to connect Victoria all the way to Maidstone. So this is including the purple pedestrian crosswalks that are included as part of this project as well. And then those purple crosswalks, like I mentioned earlier, we're hoping to extend those northerly towards South Talbot Road in conjunction with this project. So we are working with the MTO on that now. Sorry, I just can't share my screen here. The Hanlon Street extension from our EA that we completed it looks like this here. So essentially, this is directly from the environmental assessment that the town completed in conjunction with the MTO, which shows an ultimate build out to connect Fairview with Gosfield, which would be the other alternative route for the closure of the Victoria and Highway 3 intersection. So you can see that there are provisions for both the easterly or north and south, or east and west, however you want to look at it. There are provisions for traffic to flow in either direction on and off the highway. The MTO has provided the traffic analysis through the TESR, which I can share with the council at any time. I know some councilors have come to see me about it and have seen the document already, which is where most of this stuff comes from. But there are provisions to get that traffic flowing. There are things that are happening to ensure that the town's best interests are taken into account in terms of traffic flow and movement, because of the result of that closure. So I hope I hit all of your questions, Councillor Guerin, and if you have another question, I'd be happy to answer it.
Yeah, so thanks, Kevin. So when we're talking about the Highway 3 work that they're going to be doing, my understanding then is there'll still be access to the highway while they're building the new highway, correct?
They will have to close the intersection to build the highway. There'll be too much construction activity within that corridor. When I get word of when that intersection will be closed, I will certainly, post that to our residents, make sure it's communicated on social media and our website, and ensure that council's aware of it too in advance. So we don't have an exact timing on that closure. Like I said, the objective right now is to complete the contract 1 or phase 1 work of this project, which is the reconstruction of South Talbot, those Maidstone Avenue improvements to the intersection at Highway 3, and also realigning the Essex outlet drain that crosses the highway at Victoria and Highway 3 now. So those are the main objectives right now.
Sorry,
Kevin-
Councillor Guerin, just to maybe help. Kevin, in terms of the reasons they're doing South Talbot is to be able to provide access to residents from Victoria to Maidstone while they're working on the highway. So that's why they're doing South Talbot first?
Yeah, correct. That's why that's the first phase.
Right. So basically then, because that Hanlon extension is going to become much later, anybody on that side of town, which is towards the arena, will either have to take Main Street up to Maidstone and go up to the highway and catch it there, or they're going to be going over to this South Talbot, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So they will have to find other provisions for getting to the highway. Mind you, the MTO considers through that traffic study that South Talbot Road could be used for either one of those at this time. But knowing that there's a development being proposed where the Hanlon Street extension is now, we are working with the developer on getting that constructed as well. So
Yeah.
I want to say that it's not in the too distant future that you'll see Hanlon Street extension, but it is contingent on the timelines of that development.
Yeah, and really the Gianni Estates is basically at a hold until we can get that extension done as well, right? So
No,
on me-
it would be in conjunction. Just to clarify, it would be in conjunction. It is something that has been discussed with the developer, and the developer has been in contact with the town and the county to work through all of the agreements that they need to get through to get that development going.
Okay, and the last one, Kevin, sorry, is the Main Street. Once we start doing that streetscape, and it'd be the same for Harrow, I guess, is access for Main Street going to be, say, shut down on just one side of the road, so you have traffic flowing maybe one way, or would the whole street be shut down at periods of time? Or I'm just wondering what the detouring plan is for something like that.
So for the Essex, you're speaking specifically for the Essex streetscape?
Sure.
So the Essex streetscape is a little bit too preliminary for me to know exactly what we're going to be doing in terms of construction phasing, right? Since we're only in detailed design right now. So we're still doing an evaluation of the sewers, the water main, and all of our preliminary work that we would do. Once I have a little bit better grasp on what the detailed design is, I can answer that question for you. But at this time, it's far too preliminary to know.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And I think on that too, Councillor Guerin, I'd like to stick, the item and not leak into potentially other items that it may take the spot of something else later. So we'll stick to the highway right now. I don't know if you have any other
Well,
comments.
it's all part of the traffic flow, right? That's all I'm asking. Because Main Street's going to be a flow for people that are living over by the arena. They're gonna be using it to get over to bypass the Victoria one. They can't go up Maidstone anymore to get to Highway 3 because it's not gonna go to anywhere. And they're not gonna be able to go to Victoria, so they're gonna have to use Main Street. That's why I was asking it. But I'm good,
Sure.
thanks.
Fair enough. Okay, Councillor Bjorkman, and then Deputy Mayor Malone.
Thank you, Chris. To Kevin. So when Highway 3, when they get into the next phase and they're actually going to do the overpass for Victoria, will Highway 3, will there still be 2 lanes of traffic out at the highway, or is the entire highway going to have to shut down and a bypass detour for both directions of traffic?
No, there'll be a lane shift on the highway itself to maintain east-west traffic in both directions. It likely won't be the 2 lanes that are the ultimate build-out. It's going to be something similar to what you've seen on Highway 401 if you traveled it anywhere in the last couple of years, where they shift everybody to one side and put a barrier up. So be very similar to that.
Excellent. Deputy Mayor Malash?
Thanks, Chris, to Kevin as well. Once they start construction on the overpass, are you saying that traffic from Ward 2 will not be able to use that route into Essex until the completion of the overpass?
So I don't have that answer for you right now because they're working on the drawings for contract 2 now. When I do have that information, I will certainly provide it to council. Any type of closure that'll happen will be communicated publicly. We have an arrangement and an agreement with the MTO that they will provide us notice for any town road closures, and they will let us know in advance so that we can inform the public and inform our council of any impending closure. So when I do have that information, you will certainly be the first to know.
Thank you. And do we know how long, once they start construction of the overpass, how long that construction will take?
The overall construction is planned to be 3 years, starting with the first phase, which is happening right now with South Talbot. The overall project, which I believe contract 2 is going to be very centrically focused on that overpass structure and getting the fill in to change the grade of the highway. But I've been told that the overall schedule is to complete it within 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else with the questions on that? We're coming up to our 15 minutes, so I think we're good on that one then. Okay, thanks Kevin for that. Okay, next one, Councillor Guerin. This one is your item as well. In terms of sidewalks, to be completed, Bell Thomas Brock area, in line with the latest accessibility committee report. So Councillor Guerin.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm not sure if any other councillors get the calls from that area, but I know it's been talked about previously in previous councils. I mean, they are roads that are very close to our main street corridor. I know there's likely some other issues in that area as well with drainage, I'm hearing, and stuff like that. But sidewalks seems to be important. Thomas Street sidewalk stops for whatever reason halfway down the road, and the one side it just stops. So I'm not sure why, but they like to see them continued. Like to see a way, I guess, with the high school and the kids walking. They're constantly having to walk on the road, and it's a shortcut. Let's be honest. You get up the intersection of Maidstone and Main Street, and a lot of people will bypass that light and cut over on the Harveys and the Albert Streets and the Thomas Streets. So they're whipping around there pretty quick. So for safety, I think sidewalks would be nice. If I lived on there, I probably wouldn't want one because I'd have to shovel it, etc. But I could see how they're needed. I'm not sure if Councillor Bowman gets the complaints, and or when you've been councillor for a while now in town, I'm sure you have. But that's kind of where it was brought up. I believe Councillor Vokes was also dealing with sidewalks and during his terms as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guerin. Kevin, do you want to give a quick response to that? I think maybe Morley then has a comment after.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, very similarly to the pathway or sidewalk that we're speaking of on Maidstone, the town has very limited funding, especially for new sidewalks. New sidewalk funding has often come from resolution of council and wish list through council. You know, I will say with the no increase in taxation this year and the struggles of increasing construction costs, it does cause issues that we have to, that we really need to maintain our sidewalks, and we need to focus on maintaining our sidewalks, and that's been our main focus, is maintaining the existing infrastructure. But again, there's nothing to say that this can't be done. It can be evaluated. My suggestion to council would be, if this is a priority, to include it in the council wish list and include it in the budget for 2022.
Councillor Bowman and then Councillor Guerin. Councillor Bowman.
Just to reiterate the issue of traffic moving down those areas, everybody knows if you ever come down Victoria and you want to go north on Talbot, you certainly don't take Victoria all the way to Talbot. You take Thomas and go across. So it puts so much traffic on those back streets getting over either to Tim Hortons or just going north, or and some people just going to Canadian Tire. And the same with the traffic of kids hitting to the high school. The basic flow from the side of town west of Talbot Street or south of Talbot Street, whichever you call it, it moves down Thomas Street to get to the high school. So there is a congestion there. It's been documented, and I've had all kinds of calls over the years. And my answer has been, well, when Thomas Street gets upgraded, we'll be putting new, the program these days is to put curbs and gutters in. So in most cases, sidewalks go with them. The problem is we've never done Thomas Street. So, it's always on the back burner. And then when you get to Bell, it just increases the problem. So it's something that's needed, and sooner or later, we're going to have to do it.
Councillor Bowman. Councillor Guerin.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is on our wish list. Outside of the items outside the budget, it does have a project number. It has an amount of $50,000. I would question, but it is in the wish list. So I guess that means it is started and can be discussed next budget, I guess.
Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, I just want to add to, to pull it out of the wish list, we need to pull it out of the wish list. Council needs to pull it out of the wish list to be considered as part of the budget. But I also want to I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you that, I think it's great that we have all these initiatives and we want to increase walkability in the town, and I'm all for it, and I will do whatever council wishes, truly. But just keep in mind that every time we increase infrastructure, there is an operational impact as well. So a lot of capital decisions do come with operational impacts. And the deputy mayor did mention it, things like snow removal and future replacement and the current level of service that we're keeping all have an operational impact that could have an impact on operational dollars and funding that. So as long as council is aware that every capital decision does have operational impacts, I'm more than happy to do whatever council wishes.
Councillor Bowman and then Councillor Bondi.
Just a quick question. Is there any idea that Thomas Street will be revitalized in the next few years, either with storm sewers or upgrades of the road, or is it even on the radar?
I will say that it is on my radar. I can recognize the area has some older sewers. So there is a need to look at the storm sewers in this area. The water main is fairly new in this area, so it's not of much concern, or the sanitary sewers. But these roads being in Ward 1 do need to eventually be done as well. So we need to look at everything as a whole, right? I mean, we look at the roads, the sidewalks, the sewers, the infrastructure, all as a whole. And this neighborhood is certainly on my radar for future reconstruction as well.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you. Yes, this is something that has been on council's wish list for a while, even if it wasn't officially on the wish list. We have had residents come forward requesting this. That being said, I want it too for that area, but I have got a lot of complaints in the last 6 months in Ward 1 about existing sidewalks that are trip hazards that I think are more of a liability at this point. So I would want to really have a thorough study of our sidewalks and see where our limited funds could go. I also think it's not a bad exercise for somebody, and I know it's COVID, but it could still be done, somebody to talk to all of the residents on the road and make sure that we have a complete understanding of what the residents there want. For example, on Queen Street now, even though we as the area wanted sidewalks on Queen Street, there's still people that didn't want them. And there's still people that are mad. My first term in council, Arthur Street, I had a group of parents saying the kids want sidewalks. So I did a survey on each home, and 75% of homes there didn't want sidewalks. So if we were going to put sidewalks in an existing area, an older area rather, that doesn't have sidewalks, I would want to make sure that we do a really good job with public consultation and not just listening to the loudest, whether they're majority or minority. That's what I think we've got to do is find out, because some people love them and some people really hate them because they do have to shovel them. Some people are elderly in our community and they don't want that responsibility. So I think it's on the radar. I would rather see from our wish list project, though, the paved shoulder on the school in Ward 2 for Colchester North. So I would support that over this if we have to prioritize. Thank you.
Really good discussion, Council. I think it's important to note, as well as you noted, public consultation. We did that with the trail on Erie Road South, right? We did that we understand the impact, but those trails are also for the users, similar to roads, right? The roads are as well as the people that live on them. But so I think it's listening to all those. That's an excellent point. So Deputy Mayor Meloche.
Thank you. And a very good point, Councillor Bondi. And I think on Maidstone Avenue, you're going to see the same thing happen, where if we put a sidewalk from where it currently ends right now past all those homes that exist on Talbot right now up to where Peter Street is, you're going to have complaints from those residents as well. That's why I was asking whether it's going to be a multi-trail that the town's going to clean or whether it's going to be a sidewalk. The sidewalk's going to be a hard sell for those people because they don't really care whether there's a sidewalk in front of their house. We're doing it for the traffic from town out to the commercial district so they can get to Tim Hortons and McDonald's and whatever other businesses that are going to go up, eating establishments that are going to go up on that corner at a later point in time. The other thing just one other thing that I have to point out for amusement here is that I get a lot of complaints from residents in rural areas that live on gravel roads, that walk down the roads and they get whipped by stones. So maybe we should put sidewalks all along all the gravel roads too, so it's a little bit safer for them. Just joking.
Does that mean we get to keep them gravel, Deputy Mayor Melange?
No, but if we hard coated those side roads that are gravel right now, we wouldn't have to worry about the stones whipping at them when the cars drive by.
We'll put the paved shoulders on the gravel roads.
Okay.
I think the only other thing, and I know Kevin probably was going to speak to it, in terms of sidewalk inspection, we do that yearly. Councillor Bondi, we go out and inspect, and we have our own sidewalk grinder that you've probably seen out that grinds any lips that are, anything that's outside of the threshold that we feel is a hazard. So that's something that's done yearly in terms of inspection of those sidewalks. And then, as he noted, when we try and replace and repair, it's those low spots and low sections and the ones that over time the lawns have been built and collect water and the roots and whatnot. So I just wanted to add that. Anybody, Councillor Bowman, you got your hand up there?
Just a point I'd like to make, and it has to do with sidewalks in general. Sidewalks in general are put in place for safety issues. If you ask anybody, as Councillor Bondi just mentioned, you'll get 50% want them, and the people that live there basically don't want them. And that'll always be the case. So as a council, you really have to look at, is this a safety issue? And how does it fit into our plan? And if it is a definite safety issue, then we have to address it, I think. Whether you want a sidewalk in front of your house or not should not be the deciding factor. Thank you.
Excellent. Good discussion again. Is anyone else with respect to sidewalks on Bell and Thomas?
Chris, if I could just add to your comment just quickly, to Councillor Bondi's point about the sidewalks, we do in fact inspect them annually, but that is the amount of effort that we put into the sidewalks is a level of service set by council. So if you would like to see the level of service increased on our sidewalks and have the gaps and the tripping hazards that are being brought up and the tolerance has changed, we can certainly change that level of service. Currently, we invest $50,000 annually into fixing our sidewalks. So if council wanted to increase that level of service, it could be done at budget time.
Okay, good stuff. On to the next one. I think we've I'll bring it up, but I think if there's anything else, I think it was Councillor Bjorkman that brought the Highway 3 expansion up. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that expansion that I guess that we haven't talked about yet, Councillor Bjorkman?
No, thank you. That was a good discussion earlier, and it took care of all the things I was looking for. So thank you.
Is there anything else from anybody else about the Highway 3 expansion that they would like to discuss in this slot, I guess? Seeing none. Okay, good. That'll help address some additional topics then. Although I think oh, I see. Sorry, Councillor Vanderdon. I have the same issue the mayor does during council meetings. So I have to be, I guess, in agreement with him on that. So Councillor Vanderdon.
Thanks, Mr. Nepsy. And I have to admit, I put my hand up really late. It wasn't the internet this time. I just like some clarification on the timing. So they're doing just on Highway 3, perhaps through you to Mr. Gerard. So they're doing they're extending South Talbot first as the detour, and there's no timing on the closure for the start of building up the earth for the overpasses. That's correct?
Yeah, we know roughly when that's going to happen simultaneously, right? So or successively. Essentially, once South Talbot Road is constructed, we'll start seeing the work happen on Highway 3 itself and some of that staging. The reason why I say that I don't know the exact dates is because those design drawings and those things haven't been finalized yet. So it hasn't been communicated to me at this time when that's going to be happening.
Okay.
But it can be
but
assumed
this-
that it's going to be this year. Yes.
Okay, good. Because, I mean, I've already seen that the signs, Coco is staging the signs in the former work yard on the west side of Highway 3. And I happened to hear while in Windsor last week that the structure contracts may have already been awarded. So I was just, okay, that's a good clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor. Yep.
Chris, just one other point really quick. I have concerns about Hanlon, the extension on Hanlon. I'm concerned that we're going to get screwed over by the province on, like, if they go ahead and close off the on-off ramps at the overpass at North Malden and Victoria, what guarantees do we have that we'll actually have money later on to expand Hanlon? Like, do we have a contract with them that says they have to fund that Hanlon section? Or are we just going to, on a handshake, say, okay, you guys owe us for part of Hanlon? Like, I'd really like to know that was more solid, that we're going to get the money for Hanlon. If we're going to bow down and say that we're going to close off Victoria and North Malden, because that North Malden closure is a real pain in the ass for residents in Ward 2. I can tell you right now, there's going to be a lot of complaints about it because they have to drive all the way up to Fairview, all the way down Fairview up to Hanlon, cross over to County Road 23, and then come back up to number 3 highway to go to Kingsville. That's supposed to be their route. In all honesty, I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to take different routes, but I just want to make sure that if we're getting something out of this, that we make sure that we're actually getting something out of it. Do we have a contract that we're signing that says they're going to have to owe us some money for that? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Deputy Mayor. I know Kevin can provide. Yep. Kevin?
Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties with my mute button there. Yeah, we do have an agreement with the MTO for the cost sharing agreement for that. I have been working with the MTO to try and secure those funds now. So the agreement does state that we have to agree to the cost. So we are working through that right now, and there's no real chance of the MTO not allowing this to happen, and they are going to fund it.
Add to that, so I just wanted everyone to note they're funding a rural cross section, right? So they're not funding, 4 lanes of curb and guttered work. So the funding in the agreement was based. So, appropriate amount of asphalt base, open ditches. So that was the agreement that was struck. I don't know how many, almost half a decade ago, probably. And then the enhancements, it's kind of an odd deal with the developer. It's their property, right? Working through then what they require for their development. And then that money will be worked out that way. So it's definitely a good chunk of change. That it has been set aside for years. And I think Deputy Mayor Meloche, you can probably appreciate they get hammered by their finance department every year because they ask what this carryover is for. And it's for us. So it's there. Councillor Guerin.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so now that we're on that subject, there's going to be 2 roundabouts in that road. Who's picking up the bill for those? Like the ones on a connecting link with the county. And there was some discussion at one of our open houses by a resident that was right at the end there. His concern with the roundabout and bus stop being right there too. I just wonder if you can touch base on a little bit on the 2 roundabouts.
Kevin can in terms of the EA and ultimate build out. Yes, Kevin. We
are currently working through that with the developer now. They haven't. The developer hasn't quite applied for draft plan approval yet. But it is something that we'll be working through with the developer and the county as well through that process. So I don't have any specific details for you now. If Chris has any that he knows through having completed the EA, but I don't have anything for you right now. But I can certainly provide that to you at a later date once we are a little bit deeper into the development.
Well, thanks. It sounds to me like there's going to be a few people paying for this extension. MTO, builder, maybe some of the county, and it looks like we're going to have to put in some money as well. Is that right? Am I getting this right? For it to be the way we want it to be.
Yeah, it is possible that the town will be pitching in some money as well, in addition to the money that we're going to receive from the MTO. At this time, I don't know what for, and I don't know how much. And council would certainly be a priority, obviously, without council approval. So those details would come likely through a cost sharing agreement as part of the development agreement as well. So, but all feasible questions, yeah.
Okay, I see a thumbs up. Any other questions on the Highway 3 expansion? Well, it's good we saved some time there because I think the next topic might chew up some of it. As far as Mayor Snively, you brought up the assumption of beach road. So if you want to take us through where you're at with that.
Thank you, Chris. The reason I brought this forward, I'm sure South End have been approached on taking over some of these beach roads. The only reason I put this on the list here is I'm really not in favor, okay, to be honest with the council. I'm not in favor of taking over beach roads. It's a very, very costly on each of these roads because each of these roads have to be brought up to standards like the width, the drainage. It's a terrific cost to the municipalities. So, and that's the reason I brought it forward because I think our priorities to me are the roads out in our municipalities, like town roads and concession roads. They're more important to me than taking over a private road. Most of these roads that I'm being asked about are private. So, and that's the only reason I brought it forward, but council might have a different view on them, but that's my view on taking over private roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Kevin, did you want me to step in here in terms of a little bit of history on this?
Yeah, it's not too often you get to ask your boss to take over, so absolutely.
Oh, man. Okay. Just a little bit of history. So, I mean, this has been around, I think, for as long as I've been here in terms of the assumption of beach roads. We've got three different types of beach roads out there, right? We've got the owned and assumed roads, which are municipal roads. We have the owned but not assumed roads. So roads that have somehow become our ownership, either history, grandfathered, but we've never assumed them. And it's a very important differential. And then we've got not owned and not assumed roads, which are private roads, essentially private roads. So you've got the three out there. A couple terms of council ago, the rules changed on what you could do on an unassumed road without inherently assuming it. At that time, council made it a priority to provide minimal level of service on the unassumed but owned beach roads. Some grading and some winter control, not to the same level of standard that we would take owned and assumed roads, but a minimal, I think it's at 4 inches of snowfall and grading a couple times a year or as needed. From that, we've had many a discussion, I know I have with council, into where do we go from here? How we have some homeowners or some residents that want their over by the town so that they can get the same level of service that owned and assumed roads get, lighting, sidewalks, hard surfaces, whatnot. As the mayor noted, that where we've pushed have come back with some, well, you take care of your drainage and provide us the proper turnarounds if needed for our vehicles to access that. A lot of them are really glorified driveways, to be honest with you, and end up with these teed ends that are hard to maintain, hard to manage, hard to enter, hard to exit. So the onus was on the residents to come forward and say, look, you want to petition your neighbors, you want us to own and assume it, you're going to have to agree to making sure the drainage is up to snuff, making sure the road widths and the turnarounds are at a level that we're acceptable with, because it comes down to, this is their road, this is their, it's owned, it's assumed by them. It gets into that argument of, why should your other taxpayers pay for something that's not theirs? And that's where we've always kind of landed. It's a big can of worms, admittedly. So I'm not sure where this council sits on it. I know the previous councils wanted to talk about it and then just end up kind of leaving it, I think, because it's such a big issue. So I'll throw that out there. Councilors, any other, I guess, questions or additional detail you're looking for? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you there. I don't believe that this topic is going to suffice in a 15-minute conversation. I just don't think we could do it justice in 15 minutes, because I think it's something that no matter what we do, we're not winning every battle here. The challenge I have with it, and before, at the start of the terms, we used to have a roads plan, and then we did have a beach road in there every couple of years, and sometimes they got done and sometimes they got bumped, but at least we saw in a budget that there was, say, one beach road a term. And then if we accomplished that, where now, I will be honest, I am not crazy about how the roads are, like, they seem to be lumped. All of the road money is lumped, and then we don't really know what we're doing. So I think it's a bigger conversation for rather than tonight. And I'll let the rest of council talk.
Yeah, Councillor Bondi, if I can speak to that. The beach road that was in there was, any road that was put in the budget was owned and assumed. Had nothing to do with roads that were unassumed. This topic is dealing with those roads, the assumption of beach roads. So separate topics, a good topic still, but separate topics. Any other councillors want to open this can? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, and again, this has been something that's been on the books for a lot of years. I never really was in agreement with, and exactly the way you had mentioned, Chris, the way we should be looking at it. If the residents are willing to put the money into it to bring it up to a standard that we can take it over, proper drainage and proper widths, accessibility at the end of the a round court at the end so our trucks can get turned around and all that good stuff. If they can come to an agreement and put the money up to get to that point, then I really don't have a problem with taking it over. It's just getting to that point. And then again, it should only be a limited amount of roads that we bring on stream over a period of time. I'm going to be totally honest. It just depends on who's on council. Like if you have back in the days when Paul Ennis was on council with, somebody that has more to do with the beach roads, a councilor that lives in that area, and that was their forte, or that was what they really wanted to accomplish while they were on council. I don't think there's really anybody on this term of council that had that as one of their campaign strategies, was that I'm going to get beach roads accomplished. And that's where that all came up. Years ago, there were a couple of councillors that was their goal. That was their strategy. And the reason why they were elected was to get beach roads done. And that's where this all came from. But it wasn't a totally bad idea. It was something that we should be trying to do as time goes on, but as we have money. And that's the way I am with it too. Exactly what you said, Chris. If Chris Nepsey, that if they're willing to put the money into it as a resident to bring it up to standard that we can take it over and assume it, then I'm okay with it. But before we pave the road, though, I want a traffic count on that road to see whether it should be paved or not. Thanks.
No, that's fair enough, Deputy Mayor. I don't disagree with in terms of when the issue is brought up. But one thing I just want to remind council, though, is it is identified in your strategic plan as far as clarifying the Assumption Beach Road process. And maybe it's as simple as how you outlined it, Deputy Mayor Malash, is just a bit of a roadmap. Putting on paper what we've been telling residents is exactly what you said. You've got to come with, at least in high level, improved drainage and improved turnaround. And at that point, we get into discussions on it. So maybe it's just putting pen to paper to put that into a very high level policy so that, it just repeats what we've all been saying for the last few years. Councillor Vanderdolen.
Yes, Mr. Dempsey, thanks. Through you and to you, I was just going to suggest something similar. I don't think we can just write this off forever and say, oh, well, it's a bad problem. Somebody else caused it. Somebody else could fix it. I think we do have to make some kind of effort to try and bring at least some of these roads into ownership, because I think the town overall would benefit if we owned them all and they were better taken care of. Property values would rise, and I believe our tax rolls would see a corresponding rise. So there is something in it for us. On the other hand, I believe the other councillors are correct, and we can't ask existing councillors, taxpayers, to pay for something that these residents got away with not paying decades or quarter centuries ago. So but I think that the way out is to have a codified response to when we get these hundreds of questions over the next few years. That just like the people who complain about speed limits, we say, okay, here's the process. You go door to door, you get your signatures, and we see where it goes. And I think we should have a process for the beach roads as well, and lay out, okay, you pay for this, you pay for that, and then maybe we can move it along. And some of them will just give up. Some of them, like sidewalks, will oppose it and will want to keep the private roads. And I think some of them might be darn near impossible because, as you say, they're glorified driveways. There's no room. So some of them will fall by the wayside. But there's got to be some easy ones that can be done. And it would be nice to get a couple done every few years. So I think codifying it for the residents on paper is the best way to go right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Councillor Vanderdolen, but I also think when you say there's got to be some easy ones, it comes at the willingness of the residents on those easy ones to want to at least pay to get it to whatever standard that's set. It'll cost something, right? At the end of the day. So, okay. So I guess just to wrap that one up, to close it, in terms of, it's in the strategic plan. So it is something that council identified. So I think from this conversation, I've got a better direction on what that's going to look like to have completed before the end of the term. In terms of, like you said, a codified response. I like how you put that, Councillor Vanderdolen. So that's something that that I can take away from this meeting to move forward that topic anyways. Okay, next one, actually, Councillor Vanderdolen, this one falls to you as well. So you had noted a new task assessment to road and infrastructure projects to create a priority list. And I know I think Councillor Guerin rated this number 1 in terms of his priority listing. So Councillor Vanderdolen, if you can give us a little bit of a summary on what you're looking for exactly out of that. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. You gotta start over.
Sorry. That's a first. Sorry about that. I think we just need to be a little bit more formal in the discussion or the minor argument we're having here tonight about, well, this is more important. No, I think this one is, and maybe we do it through the points and rating system that you use to devise this meeting. But just like the dispute some of us have over which intersections should go first, and I guess it'll have to be put to a vote. Some of us won't like the answers, but I can't see, instead of having just this wild free for all every year and seeing what we can grab for our awards, I think we need to we need to have a real priority list that put our partisan ward concerns aside for a minute and say, well, really, this intersection is so important to everybody that we should do it. And even if it's not carved in stone and it's going to be somewhat flexible going forward, I think it would be useful to have and a useful answer for residents who want to know, why aren't we doing this? And so we could say, well, because we've got these $20 million worth of jobs that we voted are ahead of it, so they're more important. And I think it would be helpful in us answering our own constituents who demanding to know why certain things aren't done yet.
That's good. Thanks, Councillor Vanderdon. I'm going to pass it on to Kevin. I know we've had many these priority lists and the pros and cons of them. And I know the mayor and I have had several heated conversations in terms of roads that have gotten moved or shifted because of developments like Weston Bakery and Victor Street and those types of things that then take the place. But I'll hand it over to Director Gerard to give us some insight on where he's at with that.
Yeah, and I know we had this conversation at a previous council meeting as a result of a notice of motion for a priority list of roads, and yes, there are some complications with doing that. I think one of the big things that came out of that from the meeting was that that we would be preparing a list, and if we don't succeed in that list because it's ever so changing, that residents depend on it, and there's more backlash because of the lack of movement on it and things like that. And it kind of goes to what Chris is saying about the pros and cons of it. Council has made the initiative to assess our road condition, which we did with LAS as part of some grant funding in the past. We are aware of the roads that require preventative maintenance, and which roads are too far gone and need reconstruction. We do have a really good handle on that and the road conditions within our municipality. It's just all those moving pieces in trying to create a priority roads list, like Chris said, like other infrastructure developments that trigger it. For instance, the good example is the increase in traffic that Victor Street is going to see as a result of the Weston apartments. Those things are ever so changing. They come up on us fast. Development is hot and heavy right now, and there's a lot happening. Very difficult to get a good handle on a priority list. I can say if there's any roads or any infrastructure questions, I can certainly speak to the condition of them and certainly speak to the needs of the town. It's just very difficult to pin down those roads, and I know Deputy Mayor Meloche actually mentioned it at one of our previous meetings about gravel roads, and we had a gravel road plan at one time, and that kind of fell apart because of changing priorities within the town, right? So the way we have been doing it is to assess our budget annually. Infrastructure Services does a review of all of our infrastructure. We do a review of the roads, any of the underground infrastructure. We try and make it as fair as possible to the ward system, making sure that we're not neglecting any wards, and that some work is happening in the individual wards as much as possible. We do ensure that we're keeping up with our current level of service at a bare minimum, unless instructed otherwise by council. So we do have a really good handle, and we do have a lot of projects that are stacking up continually of the needs of the town. It's really just what's council's wish. Do you want to spend that extra money? Then we need that extra money, right? And anything's possible with the funding, right? So it makes it very, very difficult when the list is so large and the funding is so small. So I think I'll leave it at that, and any other questions, feel free to ask.
Councillor Bondi, then Councillor Guerin.
Thank you. So, we all know that there's never going to be enough money. Maybe at some point we could have like a virtual 1-hour meeting, not like something like tonight, but a road open house meeting, because priorities have shifted. I'll just speak from Ward 4. Priorities have shifted in Ward 4 numerous times. And for example, Walnut Street was going to get done and going to get done and going to get done. And then all of a sudden Queen Street was done. But when I really talked to the community members here and I said, this is the reason why, and the water infrastructure underneath Queen is worse than Walnut, they were like, they weren't happy, but they were like, okay. So I think I would love to have a 5-year roads plan. Obviously that's not going to happen, but I think if we can show our residents in a virtual way the conditions of our roads and explain to them what from administrative, go through the administrative point of view of what are our priorities from our administration, then council and the public can see, and then we can explain it. Communication is key, I think, to everybody understanding why roads are getting done. For example, there's quite a few roads in Ward 1 getting done right now. But Harrow's getting the streetscape. So when residents understand it, it's a lot easier. So I would love to see more maps, more diagrams, and bring those to the public just to show them what's going on if we can't get a set list, because I do understand priorities are always changing, but I want to bring more information back to the public. And that information I'm not getting hardly any information as a counselor. So I would like more information so we can share more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bondi. Councillor Guerin, you're next, but just to that, Councillor Bondi, I think every year through budget, we go through just that in terms of those, similar to what Kevin, instructed you, but in terms of why roads are picked and why roads are off the list. And we have those discussions and that information is passed through to you. So, I guess I'm sensitive to when I hear that you're not getting any information. I disagree. I think through budget process, you get a lot of information on these roads and how they're picked, but maybe, it's not that road setting and it's wrapped into the budget form. I don't know, but I'll just leave it at that. Councillor Guerin.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, so to this point, we know the roads, we identify them. Everyone knows the roads. If you go on any social media page, everybody knows the roads. It's coming up with the money, coming up with a plan. And I think the plan can be changed, like your plans in life. Along the way, sometimes you have to change it up a little bit. So if we have a little bit of a plan, we identified the roads. Like, I don't know what we're going to do with Irwin. There is a lot of work being done in Essex, and I'm very grateful. And I think the residents are going to be more than grateful. But Irwin, if next term of council, they're still dealing with Irwin, that's a shame. We've identified the problem. If that means we should have cut out 2 or 3 other projects along the way, then maybe that's what we should have done. Because in Irwin, you're really going to see the stress on Irwin once we start doing the main street. They're already cut across because they're afraid to go up that intersection facing Piggy Mart's Plaza and try to make a left on that road's impossible. So they cut in behind the municipal hall and they take Irwin, and even more going to take it once we start doing the streetscape. So, like we're in that, like Kevin said, lots of stuff being done in Essex. I think a lot of it's long overdue. We've found a way with this Highway 3 expansion. A lot of stuff is forcing us to kind of move on a lot of things. Flooding in 2014 has pushed us to move on some things. So it's all good stuff, but I guess if we can identify the roads and come up with a plan, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if the plans get put on the back burner from one year to another, I would rather deal with that than deal with someone asked me about Urban right now, when's it going to be done? I'd be telling them I have no idea. And they'll say, well, you're my counselor. What do you mean you have no idea? And I'll say, I have no idea. We have no money to come up to do the road. Well, you're doing this road, you're doing that road, and you're doing that road, and those roads ain't any worse than Irwin. So those people living on Irwin, they've been dealing with these problems for a long time. And so, yeah, I'd like to have some type of a game plan. It doesn't have to be formal, but it's just something that that says, yeah, you know what, this road, then that road, then that road, then that road. But then we also know that along the way, some things may get bumped ahead of the others or pushed back. So good conversation.
No, and I think that's fair points, Councillor Guerin. I'm just going to jump in here. Every ward has been affected by roads that were in the plan and aren't in the plan anymore, right? And I think what comes with that, I've lived through it. You've all lived through it, right? Irwin, Walnut, North Malden, gravel roads. They're all in there, and they've all been moved or shifted for other priorities in that year, right? And I think those answers to those residents, that's where that information in budget session to those councillors that are making the decisions on which roads we're doing, is vital. So that's where I'm hesitant. I've always been hesitant on the plan because of that, right? I mean, Deputy Mayor Malash and the rural roads, I know he brings up previous councilors set a rural roads plan, and they were all supposed to be paved by, I think, 3 years ago. And I know he takes constant abuse because that plan that was shifted is no longer there. Councillor Bondi with Walnut, it was in the budget. Where is it? Irwin, it was in the budget. Where is it? Well, decisions of council in that year push it. So that's where I'm really hesitant with the plan, because I know what it does to you as a councillor. It's easy to say we'll deal with it, but I think the information in that year, when you're making the decisions with the best information at hand, you know, and maybe those plans become very generic, you know, maybe it's, we endeavor to do whatever it is, a kilometer of gravel road in the next 5 years. I don't know, but maybe there's some in between there. I said 50 years, Rich, 50 years, I said, in the next 50. I'm kidding. Kevin, if you want to supplement, please. And then
Yeah.
Councillor Bowman, I see you there.
Yeah, and like to speak a little bit to both Councillor Guerin and Councillor Bondi's points, is that, you know, we're making decisions on infrastructure improvements based on an abundance of information, right? It's not just one single source of information. So to give you an example, I could provide you with that road assessment, condition assessment, but like Councillor Guerin said, you already know the roads. They're exactly the roads that we know. And if I release small pieces of information out into the public, like road conditions, and somebody sees, well, yeah, the worst road in Essex is Irwin. Why isn't it done? Well, that road can't be shaven paved anymore. It's so far gone. It can't be just patched up. It needs to be reconstructed, right? So that little bit of information can lead people down the wrong path. Since we're making decisions based on, you know, the functionality of the entire town, other infrastructure, active transportation, development, there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to planning for roads and other infrastructure. So I just don't want to be in a position, or put council in a position where they're using that information against you, because we're not just making decisions based on one fact, not just on road condition, but for the betterment of the entire town, right?
Bowman, then Councillor Verbeek, Deputy Mayor Malash, and Councillor Bjorkman.
Just quite quickly, priority lists really aren't all that bad. The problem is, as council, we use them for the wrong purposes, and it should be just for us to get an idea what's coming down the road. It can't be carved in stone, as we already realized. And the worst problem is when we tell some of our residents, well, it's slated for 3 years, and it doesn't happen in 3 years. And, you know, you catch flack for it for years until it happens. And a new councilor coming on always gets caught up in that, no matter how hard they try not to. It just happens. So it's a slippery slope when you start working with priority lists that are constantly changing. So quick comment, that's all.
Councillor Verbeek.
Thanks, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no, I think that we should have a document as well. I think that, you know, these we just have to communicate well that it's a flexible working document, and that it's ever changing, and the reasons why, and that gives us the opportunity to educate the community on this again and again, so that they're not you know, having the carpet pulled out from underneath them when, for the 5th year in the road year, their road isn't getting done when they thought it was. I just also wanted to jump in because, you know, you just pointed out that our deputy mayor has brought up the gravel roads again and again, and he has to. It's what his community want him to do, and he's going to. We can never forget that in the late 80s, as part of an agreement to host that big regional landfill, which, by the way, brings so much money into our coffers and pays our bills and paves the rest of the roads in the towns, the community laid down after a big massive fight when all of the communities, all of the municipalities were battling against each other for years. With the agreement, they understood that they were going to have all their gravel roads hard surfaced in exchange for hosting it. So now all of the people out in the county that are still living with the regional landfill that brings all of the truck traffic and still have all the gravel roads, and yet the entire municipality is reaping the huge benefits of financial gain from hosting it. I just want everybody to remember why our deputy mayor has to keep beating that horse.
Councillor Verbeek, I just want to let council know we're at our 15 minutes for the topic. Can I see a show of hands if we want to maintain the discussion on this? Or if you want to move? I know there's still 4 councillors left to speak. So all of those, I guess, that want to continue the discussion on this, I think it's important. I see 3. Yeah, okay. So, no, yeah, all right. So let's continue then. That's fine. Fair enough. I've got Councillor Bjorkman and then Deputy Mayor Meloche.
Thank you. I'll be brief so we can keep moving. But I've said this before to a couple people, but not in an open meeting, but might as well go. I think it's time to take the roads out of council's hand. We should be treating the roads like we treat buying trucks and other things that the town needs. This is a political thing we cannot get away from. Every one of us has talked to people, and we have people who are saying to us, you got to get this done. You know, am I going to vote for you? I want to see my road taken care of. I want to see this. And no matter how we try not to be political about it, we need to make sure, okay, is there something being done in my ward this year? There was nothing last year, so I should have twice as much. As it is a political football that roads is just this animal all unto itself. And I think our job as council is to make sure there's enough money in the budget to the infrastructure and roads department to get the roads done. They know which roads. Like I got to do a road because I got a guy saying, look at the potholes in here, look at this. And I got Kevin saying to me, there's no water main underneath this road anymore. This is the one that has to get done. So we're caught with the political football. He's caught because he's got to get that road taken care of before it falls apart. We're never going to get along when it comes to roads, but we need more money in roads. So I'm just saying, I have no problem with there being a schedule and that the infrastructure department makes the schedule. And we as councillors say, okay, how much work do we want to get done this year? We're sending $20 million to infrastructure to get it done, or we're sending $9 million because we want to build a sports field instead this year. But as long as we're part of this decision-making and we're all beholding to somebody in our community, this conversation will never end. So maybe it's time for us to look at getting out of the way and letting the roads department take care of the roads.
Councillor Borkman, I'll give you the floor for the rest of the meeting if you want to continue that logic. But no, I think we've had roads plans before, and they have failed, and this is years back, but they failed because, like you said, it shows that the road priority list shows the next 3 roads to be in Ward X, and the person in Ward Y says, whoa, that means I'm not getting a road for 4 roads. Screw it, throw the roads plan out. So anyways, Councillor Guerin, or no, sorry, Deputy Mayor Meloche. Yep, yeah. No, my bad, Deputy Mayor Meloche.
Okay, so I totally disagree with that. That's making administration's job way too easy. We have to have the debate as a council. That's what they put us here for. They want us to be able to debate what roads should be, just like they want us to debate and come up with a plan. What's the best to where we should put sidewalks, where we should put recreation facilities, whether we should build a recreation facility or not build it. That's what we're put here for. I'm not agreeing that we should not have some kind of say in what roads are being done and how many dollars that we're putting towards it. And I do believe that we should have a plan. I do believe that we should have a road plan. It worked before in the sense that it gave us some direction. Of course, it changed because a plan is just a forecast. It's going to change as you go along. That's just inevitable. But it gave us direction as to, we could say to where we went wrong was we had a plan that went out too far. And what should happen is at the beginning of a 4-year term, we should be sitting down as a council and determining what our roads plan is going to be in that first year of council. And then you've only committed to the 4 years that you're on council. Then you can say, okay, look it, Joe gave up having Irwin done this year, but it's going to get done next year and it's still going to get done in my term of council. And then he has to keep track and make sure that Irwin gets done in his term of council, because if he wants to be successful going into his next campaign, maybe I'm fighting or Tim's fighting for, or maybe Chris Vanderloon fighting for one road to be done that's gravel road now that should be a tar and chip road. And that's what it is for the 4 years. We just shorten the term of a roads plan. Instead of always making it 5 years out, make it for the term of that council. And then we negotiate whether we want this road or that road done in which years. And then administration works with that. And if something else comes up, then we have to look at that roads plan, because it is just a plan. We look at that plan and we say, okay, look it, we can't do Irwin in this 4-year term, but these are the reasons why. And we give Joe and Morley excuses or reasons why they can give to their residents that we can't do that road. That's what I think we should be doing. First year of the term of council, there should be a roads plan set up for those 4 years. Just my thought.
Excellent. No, good thoughts. I think that's, I'm, thinking about that for the next term of council. That's good. I like that input. Councillor Guerin, then Councillor Vanderdolen.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I love those points, Deputy Mayor Malash. It's great. It would be helpful when I was new coming in as a new councillor, you had that discussion, you're learning lots of things. But you get right in at the first year and you kind of get the expectations set on for your next 4 years, which is great. I just wanted to make sure that when I'm speaking about roads that I think need to be done, I'm not really speaking to administration at all. I'm speaking to my 7 council mates. I'm letting us know we need to do something. It's us to figure out which roads we want to do, and then administration to kind of sort through the, well, it should be done or shouldn't be done, and this is why it can or can't be done, and this is maybe where we can or can't get the money from. I don't get many people complaining to me about roads specifically that live on the roads. I'm getting complaints for Victoria and Irwin from people that just travel on the roads that live not even in Ward 1. They could be living outside of Ward 1. So unlike sidewalks, where maybe it's the person living on the road saying, I need a sidewalk. But here's the shining factor to all this that we can look forward to is the growth that we're experiencing right now is really good. And hopefully in the next few years ahead, we're going to be in a way better position to put more money towards our roads budget. And I think that's coming with the industry growth, commercial growth, and all the new builds. I'm hearing it right now. A lot of people say, hey, what's going on? I mean, you got all these new homes. Where's the money? Well, we know we bit the bullet on some development fees, and residential taxes is not as big as we get industrial and commercial, but we do have that. It's going to come. And I think we're getting close. I think we're going to be there sooner than we thought we would have been. I mean, it was stagnant for so long in Essex. Not saying that nothing got done, say in Ward 1, for example, but we're seeing more people building now. So we see it in our reports that Ms. Chadwick gave us. So that's the good thing coming out of all this. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Guerin. And I think it really ties nicely to development charges and a real thought process when you're looking at development charges and what they pay for and what they line up, and the waiving of industrial and commercial, and residential in different wards has a huge impact on those future improvements for those things, intersection improvements, growth type improvements. So Councillor Vanderdolen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dempsey. I have to disagree with Councillor Bjorkman on taking this out of our hands. I mean, as much as it would make my life a lot easier, I mean, it's the essential job we were elected to do. I mean, the uncomfortable job of arguing priorities and what gets done is our job. That's what we were elected to do. And roads is job one in municipal politics. So I can't see that you take, it's almost the number one thing on the list, and take it out of our hands and put it in someone else's hands. That's like evading responsibility, I think. Still, these lists and priority lists do cause us more grief than they should. And maybe it's the label. Maybe we should just put a different label on it. Instead of calling it a priority list, which makes people think, oh, it's going to get done. Instead of calling it what was the other one, plan, maybe we should just call it the municipal needs list, or identified municipal needs. So we recognize, yes, we need this, but it's not a plan. It's not a priority list. It's not something that can be a club that can be used to beat us all over the head with later. It's that, yes, we recognize we need this. It's on the needs list, and we're going to try to get to it. You know, but it depends on the unfolding realities and priorities that confront us every day. So sometimes it's just the packaging that can make all the difference. Just a suggestion.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Municipal needs, infrastructure needs, maybe. Councillor Bowman, I just want to let council know it is 5 o'clock. So that has been 2 hours. I think after this discussion, we'll wrap it up. And then I have some comments with respect to some of the, in terms of maybe getting them through some answers and not waiting for the roundtable. So Councillor Bowman.
Just quickly, thought came to mind. The list could be called forecast rather than priority. It just sort of what's forecast in the future, and when it happens, it happens. Okay.
I would add most of the roads to that list then. Here's a map of the town. There's your forecast.
It's still a forecast, so yeah, you know.
Okay, so excellent discussion. I truly appreciate council's time. I think it's beneficial. Councillor Verbeek, I know it's early and I know the sun was out, but in terms of administration time and council's time, even I think this time may lead, potentially more often, right? It allows those meetings more often, maybe. And I think this has gone well. There are some items on those lists that I've picked through that are really operational in nature. And I think sometimes maybe it's just an email to that director and say, where are we at with these things, or where is this going? And maybe that's the discussion that's needed for the council. I know there's a public aspect to it as well, but I'm just trying to move along some of those items from councilors, issues, if they're operational or if there's something that can be just dealt with the director, and then we could inform the rest of council that way. So on that note, we'll look to set up the next time for the next category. I think it was development services or community services. I think it was development services. So we'll look to set that up and move forward on those items. And then we'll look to, put the infrastructure one back in the lineup and come back to these. I'll put some thought towards and put it out to council on reassessing that and reassessing those priority lists before those meetings, because maybe priorities have shifted for council and they want to throw something different or something new on there, and we'll go that way, similar to what we did grading and whatnot. So I don't know how to close this up, Rob. I don't know if I asked for or if it goes back to the mayor. I don't know how that works.
Yep. Just a couple procedural steps then. So if the discussion in the whole is done, then through you, presiding officer, we need a motion to rise and report back into formal council.
Yeah. So can I get a motion then to formalize this and bring it back to open council? Councillor Bowman and Deputy Mayor Meloche. Yeah. Any questions? No. All in favor? Carried.
And then through you, Mr. Mayor, on behalf of the presiding officer, I can report that there were no specific recommendations at this particular time coming out of the committee of the whole discussion. And to that end, Mr. Mayor, we'd be looking for a council to receive rise and report.
Yes, the council, I need a motion to receive it, please. Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Bowman, all in favor? It's carried. And thank you very much for council. I think there was some very, very good discussion there. Items I wanted to touch on. One was shoreline protection and on public property, and I'm sure we're already working on that. And I Bondi is the first one that, which is good, and I know Chris and administration's working on that. That was a big item. So once again, thank you, council. And at this point, I'll need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Guerin and seconder, please. Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor?